The operating room doors burst open with a violent crash, the metallic echo slicing through the hallway like thunder. Blood soaked through the uniform of the wounded Navy SEAL commander on the stretcher, crimson pooling beneath him as nurses and surgeons rushed alongside. Monitors screamed warnings, oxygen masks fogged with desperate breaths, and someone shouted that he had less than 10 minutes before cardiac arrest. But what froze the entire corridor wasn't the commander's condition. It was the moment his fading eyes locked onto the new nurse standing near the wall, and despite the agony tearing through his body, he lifted his trembling hand and gave her a perfect military salute. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of being underestimated, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Just an hour earlier, the atmosphere in the hospital had been very different. The morning shift buzzed with routine chaos, but inside the staff lounge, a group of doctors quietly laughed over coffee cups. Their attention was fixed on the new nurse who had just arrived for her first day. She stood near the nurse's station in a neatly pressed uniform that looked slightly outdated, her posture stiff, her hands clasped together as if she were trying to keep them from shaking. She looked younger than most of the staff expected, though there was something about her eyes that didn't match her age, a depth, a heaviness, like someone who had already lived several lifetimes. The hospital administration had hired her under unusual circumstances. Her resume was short, her recent experience limited, and she had transferred from a small rural clinic with almost no reputation. To the senior doctors, she looked like someone who wouldn't last a week in a high-pressure trauma center. They whispered that she was probably hired because of staffing shortages, not because she was qualified. Some assumed she would panic during emergencies. Others decided she would quit after her first difficult case. A few openly mocked her, convinced she was completely out of her league. She noticed the laughter. Of course she did. But she didn't react. Instead, she focused on her duties with quiet determination, moving carefully but efficiently, double-checking equipment, memorizing protocols, and observing everything with sharp attention. There was nervousness in her movements, but also discipline, the kind that comes from experience, not textbooks. Still, the doctors only saw hesitation, not strength. They interpreted her silence as weakness. Her name was Emily Carter, and no one in that hospital knew the truth about her past. Years earlier, Emily had been a combat medic embedded with Special Operations Forces overseas. She had faced battlefield injuries most hospital staff would only read about in training manuals, catastrophic hemorrhages, blast trauma, emergency amputations performed under gunfire. She had saved lives in darkness, in sandstorms, in freezing rain, sometimes with nothing but basic supplies and sheer willpower. But after a mission went wrong, a mission where she couldn't save everyone, she left the military carrying invisible wounds of her own. Survivor's guilt haunted her. Nightmares followed her home. She stepped away from medicine entirely for a time, convinced she didn't deserve to wear the uniform anymore. Returning to nursing had taken everything she had. Starting again in a civilian hospital was supposed to be her chance to rebuild her life quietly, without anyone knowing her history. She wanted to earn respect through actions, not titles. But the whispers and laughter chipped away at her confidence, reopening old doubts she thought she had buried. Then the emergency call came. The wounded SEAL commander had been injured during a classified training accident involving an explosion. Multiple internal injuries, severe blood loss, compromised airway, the situation was critical even before the ambulance arrived. When the trauma team rushed him in, chaos erupted instantly. Orders flew, equipment clattered, and tension filled the air like electricity before a storm. Emily froze for half a second when she saw the uniform. Not because she was afraid, but because recognition hit her like a lightning strike. She knew that insignia. She knew that posture. And when the commander's eyes found hers and he saluted, memories flooded back, missions, comrades, nights under fire, promises made between soldiers who trusted each other with their lives. The doctors didn't understand the significance of the salute. To them, it was just a confused gesture from a dying patient. But to Emily, it was something else entirely. It was recognition. Respect. A silent message that said he knew who she was, not just a nurse, but someone who had once stood in the same battlefield reality. Something inside her shifted. The nervousness disappeared. Her posture straightened, her movements became precise, and her voice, when she finally spoke, carried authority that silenced the room. She assessed the commander's injuries with lightning speed, identifying complications the team had missed in their initial rush. She anticipated the surgeon's needs before they were requested. She stabilized bleeding points with techniques rarely used in civilian settings. Every action was controlled, confident, and purposeful. The doctors who had laughed at her earlier stared in stunned disbelief. This wasn't the hesitant new nurse they had mocked. This was someone operating at an elite level. Time blurred as the surgery continued. The commander's vitals fluctuated dangerously more than once, pushing everyone to the brink of panic, but Emily remained steady. Her calmness spread to the team, grounding them when fear threatened to take over. Hours later, when the final sutures were placed and the monitors showed stable rhythms, exhaustion swept through the room like a crashing wave. The commander was alive. As the team stepped back, processing what had just happened, one of the senior surgeons finally asked the question everyone was thinking. How had she known exactly what to do under such pressure? How had she stayed so calm when even experienced staff felt overwhelmed? Emily didn't answer immediately. She simply looked at the unconscious commander, her expression softening with relief and quiet pride. In that moment, the doctors realized there was a story behind her silence, a story they had never bothered to ask about. Word spread quickly through the hospital about what she had done. The laughter disappeared. In its place came curiosity, then respect. Staff members who had ignored her before now greeted her warmly. Some even apologized. But the most meaningful moment came 2 days later when the commander regained consciousness. Still weak, still connected to machines, he asked for her specifically. When Emily entered his room, he struggled to sit upright despite the pain. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand again and saluted her, this time stronger than before. Tears filled her eyes as she returned the salute, the gesture carrying years of shared sacrifice and unspoken understanding. For the first time since leaving the military, she felt like she belonged again. The experience changed more than her reputation. It changed her belief in herself. She realized that her past wasn't something to hide or feel ashamed of, it was proof of her strength. The guilt she carried began to loosen its grip. She started mentoring younger nurses, teaching them resilience under pressure, encouraging them when they doubted themselves. Her presence became a quiet source of confidence for the entire team. The doctors who once laughed now trusted her completely. But the deeper lesson went beyond professional respect. It was about how quickly people judge what they don't understand. About how someone can appear fragile on the surface while carrying extraordinary strength inside. About how second chances aren't given, they're built through courage, persistence, and faith in oneself. As weeks passed, the commander recovered steadily. On the day he was discharged, he walked out of the hospital under his own power, stopping at the nurse's station one last time. He didn't speak much, he didn't need to. The gratitude in his eyes said everything. Emily watched him leave with a quiet smile, knowing she had not only saved his life, but also rediscovered her own purpose. Near the end of this story, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need encouragement today, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue bringing meaningful stories like this to you. Special request, before we finish, comment the word respect if you believe no one should ever be judged by appearances alone. Because sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one who carries the courage to change everything. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one salute, to remind someone who they truly are. Emily Carter walked back into the hospital that evening, no longer the uncertain new nurse who had arrived days earlier. She walked in as someone reborn, a healer, a survivor, and proof that strength often hides behind quiet faces. And in a world quick to laugh, her story became a reminder that respect should always come before judgment, because you never know the battle someone has already fought to stand where they are today.